At her lowest moment, with nothing left to lose, a desperate girl asked the unthinkable, and one man's answer shattered an empire. The termination letter felt heavier than the cardboard box Diana Chen carried down the dimly lit hallway of Morrison Marketing. 3 years of long hours, skipped lunches, and quiet sacrifices reduced to a folded piece of paper that simply read budget cuts. Her trembling hands clutched the box against her chest as if holding on to the last fragments of dignity. Jessica from the desk beside hers had whispered, "This is so unfair, Diana. You're the hardest worker here." Diana had forced a smile, swallowing back the tears burning her throat. "It's okay. Things happen for a reason, right?" The words tasted like ash, a brittle lie meant to reassure her coworker more than herself. On the subway ride back to Queens, she pressed her forehead to the smudged window, watching the city blur past. Rent was due in 2 weeks. Her mother's medical bills arrived like clockwork, demanding more than she could ever provide. Her bank balance read $247, and every digit seemed to mock her. At 24, she felt like a child pretending to be an adult, juggling responsibilities that slipped through her fingers, no matter how tightly she held them. Her phone buzzed, a message from her mother, Alina. "How was work today, sweetheart?" Diana stared at the glowing screen, her vision blurring again. She typed back, "Good." Long day, then slipped the phone into her purse before her hands could betray the truth. Alina had given everything, working double shifts as a nurse to put Diana through college. Diana couldn't bear to add her failure to the weight her mother already carried. That night, her apartment felt smaller than ever. The walls seemed to lean in as she scrolled mindlessly through social media, searching for distraction. That was when her heart stopped. Sebastian and Torres, her childhood best friend, her secret crush, smiled from a glossy photo, his arm wrapped around Victoria Sterling. The caption announced their engagement. Victoria, tall, blonde, and elegant in a way that screamed privilege, wore a ring that probably cost more than Diana's annual salary. Diana remembered the last time she'd seen him, half a year ago at a cafe near Columbia. They had talked like old times, laughter spilling easily, his brown eyes warm and familiar. Now he belonged to a world of penthouses and gala dinners, a world she could never enter. Her phone rang the next morning as she tried to will herself out of bed. "Miss Chen?" a crisp female voice asked. "This is Margaret Preston from Preston Associates. We received your resume. We'd like to interview you for the role of Senior Marketing Coordinator." Diana nearly dropped the phone. $95,000 a year, 3 times what she'd been making, a lifeline thrown into her drowning sea. But the voice added coolly, "Our clients are high-profile individuals. We require someone with significant life experience, sophistication. The interview is tomorrow at 2. When the call ended, excitement collapsed into dread. Significant life experience, sophistication. Diana thought of her life, a 24-year-old virgin who lived with her mother, who had never traveled, never dined anywhere more expensive than the corner Chinese place. How could she possibly convince them she belonged among the polished elite of Manhattan? By evening, desperation had grown sharp enough to cut. She stood outside a gleaming Tribeca tower, heart hammering in her chest. The doorman's skeptical gaze flicked over her thrift store blazer as she forced herself to speak. "I'm here to see Sebastian Torres." Her voice wavered, but the name carried weight. Minutes later, she was in an elevator of mirrored steel, staring at her reflect. And a girl hopelessly out of place. The doors opened to reveal him. Sebastian, tall and striking in a crisp white shirt, his dark hair falling perfectly into place. His smile lit up with genuine surprise. "Diana," he said warmly, "this is unexpected. Come in." His penthouse stretched before her, a palace of glass and light, the city sprawling like a jeweled carpet beyond the windows. She sat on his leather sofa, a glass of wine trembling in her hand. Every inch of his world screamed sophistication, from the chilled bottles in his wine cabinet to the effortless authority in his voice. She thought of Victoria, of the glossy ring, of the impossible standards she could never meet. And yet, when his eyes lingered on her, she saw the same boy who once gave her his lunch money, who once patched her scraped knee. Her throat tightened. She couldn't believe the words that tumbled out. "Sebastian, I need your help. I have an interview tomorrow for the chance of a lifetime. But they want someone sophisticated, someone with experience. And I don't have it, not the kind they're asking for." His smile faltered, brows knitting in concern. "Diana, you're one of the most capable people I know. You don't need—" "Yes, I do," she whispered, her voice breaking. Her eyes locked onto his, raw with shame and determination. "I'm asking you to help me become that woman. The kind who belongs. The kind who knows what it's like to be with a man. The words hung in the air, a shocking plea that seemed to stop the glittering city itself. Sebastian's wine glass stilled in his hand. His eyes darkened with something between shock and desire. And for the first time in her life, Diana felt the ground tilt beneath her, her future balanced on his next breath. Sebastian Torres stood frozen by the window, the city lights glimmering like spilled diamonds across the skyline behind him. Her words still echoed in the air, heavy, dangerous, impossible to take back. I'm asking you to help me become that woman, the kind who knows what it's like to be with a man. For a long moment, he didn't move. The soft hum of the city below was the only sound between them. Diana's hands shook where they rested on her knees, but she didn't look away. She had come here for this, for him. Finally, Sebastian set his glass down with deliberate care, as though afraid one wrong move might shatter the fragile world they were standing in. His gaze swept over her, searching her face, reading every flicker of fear and determination in her eyes. Diana, he said slowly, his voice low and rough, do you even understand what you're asking me? Her throat tightened, but she nodded. Perfectly. He raked a hand through his dark hair, pacing the length of the room like a caged animal. You want me to... He broke off, unable to say it. His control was slipping, and that terrified him more than her request. I want you, Diana whispered, her voice trembling but steadying with every word. Not just anyone. You, because I trust you more than anyone in this world. The confession hit him harder than he expected. He turned back to her, and something inside him cracked. He saw not just the nervous young woman in his apartment, but the little girl who used to chase fireflies with him in the park. The teenager who had worn a blue graduation dress that made his heart stutter for the first time. He had buried those feelings under years of responsibility, business mergers, and his father's suffocating expectations, but now they rose like a tide, unstoppable. You don't know what you're saying, he muttered, his voice hoarse. You think this will make you sophisticated? Diana, being with someone doesn't erase insecurity. It changes everything. We change. Her breath caught at the intensity in his voice. She stood, closing the space between them. Then let it change. Let me change. Because right now, Sebastian, I'm drowning, and you're the only one who can pull me up. His hand lifted before he could stop himself, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. Her skin was warm beneath his fingertips, and the smallest tremor ran through her as though the touch burned. Their eyes locked, and the air thickened, charged with something dangerous. I've wanted you for years, he admitted finally, the words dragged out of him like a confession from his soul. Since that night you walked across the stage in that blue dress, and I realized I couldn't just think of you as my best friend anymore. But I never said it because my life isn't my own. My father, the company, Victoria. I don't care about any of that, Diana interrupted, her voice breaking with urgency. Just for tonight. Just for me. Let me know what it feels like to belong. The dam broke. One moment he was standing stiffly at the window. The next he was pulling her into his arms, crushing his mouth against hers in a kiss that was desperate, hungry, years in the making. Diana gasped against his lips, then melted, her hands fisting in his shirt as if anchoring herself to him. Every ounce of restraint Sebastian had cultivated over the years snapped like brittle glass. He kissed her with the force of everything he had buried. Longing, frustration, love he had never dared voice. She tasted of wine and innocence, and it undid him. Are you sure? He whispered against her lips, his breath ragged, his hands trembling where they framed her face. I've never been more sure of anything, she breathed. His forehead pressed against hers, his voice low and raw. Then understand this, Diana. If we cross this line tonight, I won't be able to pretend anymore. I won't be able to look at you as just my friend. Her answer was a kiss, fierce and certain, and with that, he lifted her into his arms, carrying her past the glittering windows of the penthouse into a world where time no longer existed, where every choice, every touch, every whispered word would change everything. In that moment, neither of them thought of Victoria Sterling or Richard Torres or the billion-dollar empire balanced on Sebastian's shoulders. The city outside could have crumbled to dust, and it wouldn't have mattered. All that mattered was the girl he had loved in silence for years and the desperate, unthinkable request that had finally torn the truth free. And as he laid her gently across his bed, Sebastian knew, with a terrifying certainty, he could no longer stop himself. Morning sunlight spilled through the towering glass windows of Sebastian's penthouse, painting the sheets in shades of gold. Diana blinked awake, her body aching in ways both unfamiliar and exquisite. For a moment, she allowed herself to lie there, tangled in silk, her head resting on the same pillow that smelled of Sebastian's cologne. The events of the night before replayed like a fever dream, his whispered confessions, his trembling hands, the way he had looked at her as though she was the only woman in the world. But then reality crashed in like cold water. The bedside clock glared, 11:47 a.m. Her interview was in just over 2 hours. Panic surged through her veins. She slipped out of the bed, clutching the sheet to her chest as Sebastian appeared in the doorway of the bathroom, water dripping from his hair, a towel slung carelessly around his hips. The sight of him made her mouth go dry, but there was no time. "I have to go," she blurted, gathering her clothes in frantic hands. "Go?" His brows drew together in a frown. "Diana, you don't need to go to that interview. I can take care of you. Anything you want. Money, connections, security. Just say the word." The words cut sharper than he realized. She froze, her blouse half-buttoned, staring at him. "I don't want to be taken care of, Sebastian. I want to earn my own way. I need to prove I can do this on my own." For the first time, tension flickered in his warm brown eyes. "That's not what I meant. He stopped, the words dying in his throat. He wanted to tell her he couldn't bear the thought of losing her to a world that demanded she pretend to be someone she wasn't. But she was already pulling away, retreating into her armor of determination. 2 hours later, Diana sat across from Margaret Preston in a sleek Manhattan office, the city skyline gleaming beyond the glass. Her heart pounded, but something inside her had shifted. She carried herself differently now, her back straighter, her voice steadier. Margaret's sharp eyes studied her, testing her with questions about handling impossible clients, navigating scandals, managing pressure. Diana answered with a calm she hadn't known she possessed. Compared to the terror of laying herself bare to Sebastian the night before, this interview felt almost easy. Finally, Margaret leaned back, tapping her pen against the desk. "Miss Chen, your resume doesn't suggest a wealth of life I experience, but there's something about you, a presence, a maturity. Where does that come from?" Diana thought of Sebastian's lips on her skin, of his whispered confession that he had loved her since they were teenagers. Heat rose to her cheeks, but she kept her smile steady. "I've learned a lot about myself recently." "Excellent." Margaret's smile was razor sharp. "The position is yours if you want it. You'll be working primarily with our entertainment and tech clients. In fact, your first assignment will be managing the account for Torres Technologies." The words slammed into Diana like a blow. Her pulse stuttered. "Torres Technologies?" "Yes," Margaret said smoothly, oblivious to the chaos unfurling inside Diana. "Brilliant young man, recently engaged to Victoria Sterling. We'll be handling the PR for their engagement announcement and the wedding. High profile, messy if mishandled. I trust that won't be a problem for you." Diana forced her face into the mask of professionalism she had practiced for years. "Of course not," she said, her voice steady though her stomach twisted. "I can handle whatever the job requires." But that night, in the small silence of her queen's apartment, she called him. "Congratulations," Sebastian said, his voice low, weary. "On your new account." "You knew," she whispered. "You recommended me, didn't you?" "I may have mentioned your name," he admitted, guilt threading through his words. "But you got the job on your own, Diana. Don't ever doubt that." Her throat tightened. "And now I get to plan your wedding to another woman." "Diana, don't," she snapped, cutting him off before he could spill words she wasn't ready to hear. "We both knew what last night was. A one-time thing. Mission accomplished." "That's not what it was," he said fiercely, his voice cracking with raw emotion. "I told you I loved you." Her eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. "And I told you I needed to grow up. Thank you for helping me do that." Before he could answer, she ended the call and powered off her phone, curling into herself on the couch as silent sobs racked her body. The following weeks blurred into a whirlwind of venues, floral arrangements, and designer fittings. Victoria Sterling swept into every meeting like a queen inspecting her servants, her smile cold, her tone colder. "Sebastian deserves perfection," she said once, eyeing Diana with predatory calculation. "I intend to give it to him." Diana smiled politely, her pen scratching notes, but her chest burned. And then, one evening in Victoria's Fifth Avenue penthouse, the mask slipped. "I've heard," Victoria said idly, studying her manicured nails, "that Sebastian had an old friend from his neighborhood, a girl named Diana. Such a common name. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you?" Diana's pulse thundered, but her face remained a mask. "I don't involve myself in Mr. Torres's personal friendships. My job is strictly professional." Victoria's smile sharpened. "Good, because if there were connections from the past, embarrassing little associations that might taint his image, I'd make sure they disappeared, permanently. I have connections you can't even imagine." The unspoken threat sliced through the air. For the first time, Diana understood the true game Victoria Sterling was playing, and as she rode the elevator down from that glittering cage, her heart hammered with a single terrifying realization. She wasn't just fighting for her career anymore. She was fighting for her place in Sebastian's world against a woman who would do anything to destroy her. The city glittered like 1,000 false promises outside Sebastian Torres's office window. His jaw was tight, his hands clenched on the edge of his mahogany desk, as his father's voice thundered through the room. "You will marry Victoria Sterling," Richard Torres declared, his silver hair gleaming under the recessed lights. "This union cements everything I've built. With Sterling's backing, Torres Technologies becomes untouchable. We won't just be players, we'll be kings." Sebastian's voice was low, steady, but edged with defiance. "I don't love her, Dad." Richard's laughter was harsh, humorless. "Love? Love is for men who don't have empires to run. I gave up love when I built this company. You'll do the same. You think Sterling's money, connections, and legitimacy can be replaced by some girl from Queens? That's not love, Sebastian. It's weakness." The words seared like acid. Sebastian saw Diana's face in his mind, her trembling courage the night she had come to him, her fierce determination at the interview, her quiet grace even as she planned the wedding that was tearing her apart. Weakness? No. She was the strongest person he had ever known. "Business isn't worth a loveless life," Sebastian shot back, but his father's glare silenced the rest. That same night, Diana sat hunched over her laptop in her tiny apartment, reviewing timelines for the wedding. Her heart thudded as she typed Victoria's name again and again into spreadsheets. Every letter another cut. She was building the perfect day for the woman who would steal the man she loved. A knock startled her. She opened the door to find a woman she'd only seen in photographs. Carmen Torres, graceful, elegant, with streaks of silver in her dark hair and eyes that held years of unspoken truths. "Miss Chen," Carmen said softly, stepping inside without waiting for invitation. "I had to see you." Diana's breath caught. "Mrs. Torres, please, call me Carmen." She settled into the worn armchair as if she belonged there, studying Diana with quiet intensity. "My son hasn't eaten properly in weeks. He barely sleeps. And when he does speak, it's your name on his lips." Diana's composure cracked. "He's marrying Victoria in 3 weeks. It doesn't matter how he feels." "Doesn't it?" Carmen's voice was gentle, but her words cut. "I married Richard Torres 30 years ago because my parents thought he was a good match. Ambitious, wealthy, from the right family. And I have spent 30 years as a polite stranger in my own home. Is that the life you want for Sebastian? For yourself?" Tears stung Diana's eyes. "What choice do I have? He says people depend on this marriage. If he walks away, contracts collapse, jobs vanish." Carmen's lips curved into something sly, almost conspiratorial. "Do you know who holds 45% of Torres Technologies stock? I do. And Sebastian owns another 30. Richard blusters about power, but he doesn't have enough to control anything without us. Sebastian could call off this wedding tomorrow if he had the courage. He doesn't need Sterling. He never has." Diana stared at her, shocked. "You mean? I mean my son has been shackled by duty, by in fear for far too long. And fear," Carmen whispered, her eyes softening, "is the worst reason to waste a life." For the first time in weeks, hope flickered in Diana's chest, but it was quickly smothered by dread. If Carmen was right, then the only chains binding Sebastian to Victoria were ones he had chosen to wear. 2 nights later, just past midnight, another knock rattled her door. When she opened it, Sebastian stood there, eyes wild, tie loosened, desperation radiating from every line of his body. "Sebastian, you can't be here," she whispered, her silk nightgown clinging to her as though mocking her vulnerability. "I can't stay away," he said hoarsely, pushing past her into the small apartment that smelled of jasmine and vanilla. "I can't breathe, Diana. Every day without you is hell. This has gone on long enough." Her heart hammered. "Your wedding is in 3 weeks. My job is to make sure it's flawless. That's the only role I play in your life now." "I don't want a flawless wedding," he snapped, stepping closer, his voice cracked with raw pain. "I want you." Something inside her cracked. "You can't have me. You made your choice." "It wasn't my choice," he said fiercely, his hand seizing hers. "My father arranged it, pushed it, threatened me with the company, with hundreds of jobs. And you let him." Her words were knives, sharp with heartbreak. "You're sacrificing your happiness for his empire. And you want me to applaud you for it? To wait quietly while you marry another woman?" His hands shook as he pulled her closer, his forehead pressed to hers. "I don't care about the company. I don't care about the merger, I care about you. Come with me tonight. We'll leave the city. Start over somewhere no one can touch us. For a split second, the fantasy wrapped around her like silk, Sebastian's hand in hers, freedom, love, a life built on nothing but their own choices. Her lips trembled, almost forming the word, yes. But then reality slammed back. The company, the employees, the empire he had built, it would all collapse if he abandoned it, and she would be remembered forever as the woman who destroyed Sebastian Torres. Her voice broke as she pulled away, tears streaking her face. And then what? We run until the world catches up to us? You lose everything, Sebastian, and I become your ruin? I love you too much to let you do that. He kissed her then, desperate and broken, a kiss that tasted of goodbye and longing all at once. Her knees buckled beneath the weight of it, but when he whispered, "Please, Diana, don't send me away," she opened the door and stepped aside. "Go home, Sebastian. Marry Victoria. Be the man your father demands, because I can't keep breaking my heart for you." He lingered in the doorway, his eyes burning with grief and rage. "This isn't over," he vowed. "Yes, it is," she whispered, and closed the door between them. The Plaza Hotel gleamed like a crystal palace, chandeliers spilling light over an ocean of silk gowns and black tuxedos. Reporters clustered outside the golden doors, their cameras flashing as New York's elite swept past velvet ropes. Inside, 1,000 white orchids perfumed the air, each bloom imported from Thailand at Victoria Sterling's demand. It was a spectacle, every detail curated to cement the marriage of two dynasties. Diana Chen stood in the coordinator's booth at the back of the ballroom, clipboard in hand, her body rigid beneath the black tailored dress she had chosen for invisibility. Every bow on every chair was perfect. The string quartet played flawlessly. Even the champagne tower glittered like a sculpture of frozen stars. She had orchestra. Rated it all, the flawless wedding of the man she loved, to someone else. Her pen scratched across the timeline, but her gaze drifted, again and again, to the altar where Sebastian stood. His tuxedo was immaculate, his hair perfectly styled, but tension radiated from him. His hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. He looked like a man trapped, like someone about to suffocate in a gilded cage. Victoria Sterling, meanwhile, was incandescent. Her custom Vera Wang gown hugged her tall frame, diamonds glittering like ice at her throat and wrists. She glided through the room like a swan, her smile serene, her eyes sharp as glass. This was her stage, her victory. She had warned Diana weeks ago. Men like Sebastian don't marry women like you. And now, standing at the head of the aisle, Victoria looked every inch the untouchable queen. The wedding march began. Guests rose in unison, a collective gasp of admiration sweeping through the crowd as Victoria appeared, radiant, on her father's arm. Camera flashes exploded. The press whispered, "The wedding of the year, the merger of two empires." Diana forced her hand steady as she ticked each line off her list. Ceremony underway, bride entering, guests seated. Perfect. Everything was perfect, except for the tearing in her chest with every step Victoria took closer to Sebastian. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, a single message from Carmen Torres. "Have courage." Diana's throat closed. She looked up and caught Sebastian's eyes across the sea of glittering gowns and champagne flutes. His gaze locked on her like a drowning man finding air. Love, desperation, and something like pleading burned there. It stole the breath from her lungs. The officiant's voice boomed through the ballroom. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to unite Sebastian Torres and Victoria Sterling in holy matrimony." Diana's pulse thundered. Her pen slipped from her fingers. Every instinct screamed for her to stay silent, to remain the invisible coordinator. But when the officiant's words came, "If anyone has reason why these two should not be wed, speak now or forever hold your peace," it was as if the world itself dared her to move. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. 1,000 glittering eyes watched. And then, before she could second guess, Diana's voice rang out, clear and strong. "I object." The ballroom gasped as one. A ripple of shock surged through the crowd like electricity. Heads whipped toward her, pens froze, champagne glasses trembled in startled hands. Victoria froze at the altar, her perfect smile splintering into fury. "What is this?" she hissed. Diana stepped out from the coordinator's booth, her legs trembling, but her voice steady. "I object," she repeated, louder now, so that even the farthest rows could hear. "Because Sebastian Torres deserves to marry for love, not obligation." Richard Torres surged to his feet, his face red with rage. "This is outrageous. Who is this woman?" Before Diana could answer, Sebastian spoke, his voice carried like thunder. "She's the woman I love." Gasps ricocheted through the hall, socialites whispered behind jeweled fingers, journalists scribbled furiously. Victoria turned pale, her diamond smile curdling into poison. Sebastian stepped down from the altar, his movements deliberate, his heart pounding. "I can't do this," he said, turning to the stunned crowd. "I can't marry Victoria Sterling, not because she isn't beautiful, not because she isn't worthy, but because she isn't Diana. I have loved Diana Chen since we were children, and last night I promised myself I'd never lie about it again." Victoria's composure shattered. "You liar," she spat, her voice cracking. "You think you can humiliate me like this? In front of everyone?" Sebastian ignored her, his eyes only on Diana. He walked toward her, closing the distance between their worlds, and when he reached her, he took her hands in his. "I won't pretend anymore," he said hoarsely, his voice breaking with emotion. "I won't sacrifice love for duty. Diana Chen, I love you. I always have, and I will until my last breath." Richard pushed through the crowd, his booming voice shaking the air. "Sebastian, you're destroying everything we've built." "No, father," Sebastian cut in, his tone iron. "For the first time, I'm building something worth having." And right there, beneath the chandeliers and the horrified gazes of New York's elite, he dropped to one knee. From his pocket, he drew a simple but breathtaking ring Diana recognized from Carmen's jewelry box. A family heirloom, not a corporate bargain. "Diana Chen," he said, his voice raw and steady all at once. "Will you marry me? Not for money, not for business, not for duty, but because I love you more than life itself." The room seemed to hold its breath. Diana's heart thundered in her ears as she looked around, at Victoria trembling with rage, at Richard seething, at Carmen smiling through tears, at hundreds of faces frozen in shock. And then she looked at Sebastian, the boy who had shared his lunch money, the man who had given her courage, the only person who had ever made her feel like she belonged. "Yes," she whispered. Then louder, stronger. "Yes." Sebastian slipped the ring onto her finger, and the ballroom erupted into chaos, half scandalized gasps, half stunned applause. Victoria collapsed into a chair, her parents rushing to comfort her. Richard stormed toward the exit, his empire crumbling with every step. But none of it mattered, not the whispers, not the scandal, not the wreckage of dynasties. All that mattered was Sebastian's arms pulling Diana against him, his lips claiming hers as the cameras flashed, immortalizing the moment forever. For the first time in her life, Diana didn't feel like the girl from Queens pretending to belong. She felt like exactly who she was meant to be. And as Sebastian kissed her beneath the chandeliers, the city's most perfect wedding became its most unforgettable scandal. The ballroom was chaos. Some guests clapped, others shouted in outrage. Camera flashes blinded the air like lightning. Victoria Sterling's diamond smile had shattered into sobs of humiliation as her parents hustled her away, while Richard Torres's fury thundered across the room. "You've ruined everything," Richard roared, pointing a trembling hand at his son. "The merger, the contracts, our empire, gone, all because of this girl." Sebastian stood tall, one hand clasped firmly around Diana's, his voice steady even as his father's fury cracked like a whip. "No, father. For once, I've saved myself, and I've chosen love over your chains." Gasps rippled. Reporters scribbled furiously, the scandal practically writing itself. But before Richard could unleash another tirade, Carmen Torres rose from her seat. Graceful, composed, her voice sliced through the din with quiet steel. "Enough, Richard." The crowd stilled. Richard turned, startled, as his wife crossed the ballroom floor with a small folder in her hand. Her heels clicked against the marble, each step deliberate. "You speak of empires," Carmen continued, her eyes sharp. "But what you built was a prison. For yourself, for me, and now for our son. That ends tonight." "What are you talking about?" Richard snapped, though unease flickered in his eyes. Carmen opened the folder, withdrawing a set of legal documents, her voice calm and devastating. 45% of Torres Technologies belongs to me. 30% belongs to Sebastian. That means 75% of this company is controlled by the two of us, not you. The room erupted. Gasps turned to whispers, whispers to stunned silence. Richard's face drained of color. You wouldn't." "I already have," Carmen said softly. "Sebastian doesn't need your merger. He doesn't need Victoria Sterling. He never did. And he certainly doesn't need your permission to live his life." She turned to her son, her eyes warm despite the storm swirling around them. "Sebastian, you are free. Free to lead the company as you see fit. Free to marry for love, not duty. Don't waste this gift as I did." Richard staggered back, humiliated. powerless for the first time in decades. His voice broke into a snarl, but no one listened. All eyes were on Sebastian and Diana. Diana's throat tightened, her heart racing as she looked at the man beside her. He had defied his father, shattered the wedding, risked his empire, all for her. "Sebastian," she whispered, trembling. He squeezed her hand, his gaze fierce and unshakable. "I told you, Diana, I'd burn it all down before I lost you. But thanks to my mother, I don't have to." The applause that followed wasn't polite or tentative. It was thunderous. A standing ovation for rebellion, for love, for freedom. Cameras flashed wildly as Sebastian pulled Diana into his arms, kissing her with a passion that silenced everything else. That night, the news exploded. The wedding that wasn't. Sebastian Torres defies dynasty for love. Headlines screamed across newspapers and screens. The billionaire who chose a girl from Queens over a sterling heiress. Scandal to some, inspiration to others. 1 year later, the farmhouse in Connecticut stood at the edge of rolling green hills, sunlight spilling across its wide porch and white shutters. It wasn't a penthouse or a palace, but it was theirs. Inside, laughter echoed as Diana arranged fresh flowers in a vase while Sebastian came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Good morning, Mrs. Torres," he murmured against her ear, pressing a kiss to her neck. Diana leaned back into his warmth, her hands resting over his. "Good morning." He glanced down at her, his eyes softening as they fell to where her hands rested protectively over her stomach. "Ready to tell them?" he asked, voice thick with anticipation. Her smile trembled. Nervous, excited, terrified. "They're going to be thrilled," Sebastian said firmly. "Almost as thrilled as I am." He kissed her again, gentle and reverent. Diana's gaze drifted to the windows, to the rolling fields beyond, to the life she had never imagined possible. Her own event planning business now thrived, ironically boosted by the notoriety of orchestrating the most scandalous wedding New York had ever seen. Clients admired her resilience, her professionalism under impossible pressure. She was no longer the trembling girl with $247 to her name. She was respected. She was powerful. And Sebastian, freed from his father's suffocating grip, he led Torres Technologies into a golden age. Profitable, yes, but more importantly, ethical. His leadership was not born of fear, but of vision. One evening, as the sun set fire to the horizon, Diana turned to him, her voice quiet. "Do you ever regret it? Choosing me over everything you were supposed to have?" Sebastian's answer was a smile, slow and certain. He touched her cheek, eyes burning with love. "I didn't give up anything, Diana. I gained everything. I gained you." The kiss that followed was soft and full of promise, sealing a love born in desperation but transformed into something eternal.